All right. Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for sticking around. Hope you enjoyed the performance this evening. My name is Miles Boynest. I'm the company stage manager here at Pure, and I'm also a resident designer. I'm a sound designer and a projection designer at Pure. And I have the pleasure of moderating this talkback, so thank you so much for staying. Just want to quickly introduce Brad Erickson, our playwright. And Harlan Green, who is a local historian and author. Thank you for joining us, Harlan. So we're just going to kick it off. We'll ask a couple questions here, have some light exchange of discussions about the show and about Charleston and its history, and then after a bit of discussion, we'll open up the floor to questions. So Brad, a world premiere, congratulations.
Thank you.
Very exciting.
Pure.
And our cast will be joining us as they get out of costume and take a little break. So thank you, Andrew, for being so speedy. I'll just say right up at the top, as Sharon mentioned in the curtain speech, it is no small feat to write a play, and Brad's done so masterfully. We've had a really great time working on this show. So please help us spread the words. We'd love to sell out these houses. We had a really nice full house tonight, and you can really just help by sharing the good news with your friends and family. So please help us get the word out about that. With that under wraps, Brad, tell us about this play. Where did this play come from? What's the origin story of the ocean we swim in?
So my husband and I moved from California to Somerville, South Carolina, 5 years ago with the intention of creating an artist residency. And so we had looked around North America, really Mexico, Northern California, other places that we could sell our tiny, teeny, meeny little house in San Francisco and buy something much bigger that could accommodate that. And the Charleston area was on the radar screen for us because my family had been living here for many years, and I'd been coming back regularly to visit them, but I didn't know Somerville really at all. And we found this really beautiful 200-year-old house with a very large, additional dwelling unit in the back that was perfect for studios and for artists to stay in. So we bought it, and with the material on the house, like you get, what's wrong with the plumbing and when was the roof last improved and all of that, came a story in the local Somerville paper about the long history of the arts with this particular house. And in it, they named particularly two men in the arts. One had been a writer who had dozens of stories printed in the Saturday Evening Post, and the other was a painter who had in fact returned from Philadelphia to live with his widowed sister after the Reverend passed. And we have some of his paintings in the house. And it just seemed so remarkable to me that I moved into that house at the same age that the painter moved into the house, 62. And I just was like, this is so incredible. How could I possibly write a play that could somehow have fictionalized versions of the three of us without having ghosts? I mean, I know there's a ghost, but we don't actually see the ghost, and none of those three people are ghosts, right? That took a year to figure out. And then I started writing and brought an early version of it to Sharon to read, and she was, interested in it, and then took some more time to rewrite, and we did what's called a table reading here. When was it? About almost a year and a half ago, and that was with some of the actors who are in the show, most of them actually, and that was sort of when Sharon called me up a few days later and said, I think I want to produce it. So that's how we got here, but there are kernels of, real life, and I really did want to sort of elevate these two artists who are now really invisible to the world, because in their day they had their time. They had their 15 minutes, of fame, and they were interesting men. I don't know if they were gay or not. They were never married, but my mind and my experience being what it is, that's where my mind went, and I wondered about what it was like to be a gay man in the 1940s. What was it like to be a gay man even in the 70s and 80s here in the Charleston area? What was it like to live a kind of invisible life? What was it like for people that I I knew who were being erased in some of the large metro areas for infractions. And that idea of invisibility and of erasure was one of the sort of ideas I wanted to work with in the play.
Great, that's awesome. Can we speak a little bit more about those men, those characters? Because there's some history to their artistry. As you know, you say they were largely erased, but there is a little bit that we know about them.
There is, and so the Saturday Evening Post that you see running around on stage actually does have one of those stories in it. It is also true, as Harlan knows, that this writer and Dorothy Hayward did spend some time on Pawleys Island trying to turn these short stories into a Broadway play. They had lined up some stars and whatnot. Dorothy was actually, pretty influential in the New York theater scene at that time. It didn't ever happen, but I just was so enthralled with this idea of like, what was that like to be, at that beach house in Pawleys with these two people, and that just captivated me. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Great. Can you speak any to the painter or the writer?
Sure. Well, the footnoter here, the writer was a man named Glenn Allen. And he wrote, I guess, 3 novels. And his series, so close, is it Ben Adams and the so
very
Glenn
clever,
Allen,
very clever,
right? And his series of short stories were the Boise, not Billy, short stories. And I think you had said it in your podcast, and the same thing had occurred to me. Yes, it's kind of a racist trope. Boise. There's a series of short stories once collected into in a book, Boise himself. And Boise is kind of like if we are of a certain age, we can remember Hazel, of the domestic in the Mr. B household, who kind of outfoxed everybody else, but was kind of a stereotype herself. And that's the Boise stories.
Yep,
and
much.
then he did live with his mother in the Hollies, not the Pines.
Not the Pines.
The story, and he ends up shooting himself,
He
not
did.
married.
On my back porch.
Right. Did the realtor tell you that?
No.
No, of course not. Yeah.
Actually, probably on the porch of the kitchen house that the previous owners tore down. Perhaps that's why they tore it down. I don't know.
Not really a selling point.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. If you're a writer, it's very intriguing, actually.
For a large part of the population, maybe.
And the other one, real quickly, I think, the litany of names, almost Legree and Manigault. Samuel, Ravenel, Gilliard. You've probably
String of fancy names.
Yeah, I know you're related. I know they're relatives here with all those names. But truly, kind of Grandma Moses, kind of happy, African Americans. Some varying everything. But many of you probably grew up with. If you remember the little things in your kitchen that thinks about okra soup, the little recipes for okra soup with the stick figures on them, that's him as well. So he has probably, we as kids grew up having those in our houses. They're all over the place. Now they're a premium on eBay.
Yeah, the Charleston receipts of their time, right?
Yeah.
So let's talk about another historical figure that factors into Act 2, Dorothy Hayward.
Yeah.
And if anyone knows anything about Dorothy Hayward, it's Harlan Green.
Yeah.
Who has written a book called Porgy's Ghost that really tells a little bit about her story. Can you speak to her?
Yeah, so Dorothy did, so she was brought in to be a script doctor for the play Boise himself. And the script, I think, fortunately, I've never been able to track down. I saw that it was copyrighted. It had this title, and the script, the play was going to be called 80 Hours to the Minute. It was never produced, but the odd echoes are that Dorothy Hayward herself, there were so many echoes in this when I saw this play, talk about ghost, how could you have known that? Dorothy Hayward was very instrumental in the lives of African American actors. One of the odd things, in 1948, she had a play on Broadway about Denmark Vesey. And the interesting thing is, one of the black actors who was cast in that was arrested for taking a white girl across a state line for the Mann Act. And so then all of a sudden, at the last minute, they had to replace this actor, and with Canada Lee, whose mother was from South Carolina, and the play fails because of that. So just the odd resonance of, how would you know that?
Yeah,
that interracial sex had brought something down before. Dorothy Hayward unwittingly involved in it as well, and then in your imaginative reconstruction as well. So the echoes are kind of very spooky.
Yeah, that is really interesting. And one of the things that nowhere near the kind of research that Harlan has done, but in learning about Dorothy, she did help her husband, DuBose, take Porgy the novel, and they turn it into Porgy and Bess the play. And she was insistent upon having black actors play that on Broadway, and it was the first time. Previous to that, white actors would play black people with blackface. And this is the 20s. So like it was this kind of, that was part of her history and part of the story that she and I think DuBose, kind of wanted to talk about the South. And
yeah, Dorothy was originally from Ohio. She was probably, I don't think, DuBose for his time period, I think was very, much less prejudiced, that noblesse oblige, much less prejudice than the variety of people. Dorothy grew up in Ohio, had no racial bigotry at all, and she calls Denmark Vesey one of the greatest heroes of African Americans. So she was very instrumental but the whole thing too, again, the ghost of appropriation. Porgy and Bess, this great opera about African Americans in the city of Charleston, done by white people. And I love the phrase that you used that Joy said so well, appropriation or appreciation, consider that stolen, that phrase. But that the whole thing of cultural appropriation is so germane to everything.
Let's talk about the house a little bit more. It was called The Hollies, and you've changed it for this fictional
the innocent.
Just protect the unbeknownst. But the Pines in this play. What did you learn about the house in your writing of this play as you did a little bit more research, if anything?
I grew up in suburban Chicago, and then I lived in San Francisco, which have fairly old houses. The house I lived in was maybe 100 years old. But for me to move into a 200-year-old house, and the history that is in the walls, in the same, it is the original floors. It's the original glass on the windows. And that sort of feeling of that history, and to be honest, with the artisans, one of them is here, who has stayed with us before, they talk about experiencing spirits in the upstairs bedrooms. I never have, but people swear to me that they do. So that idea of like living in a structure that has that kind of history, those stories, those lives that were lived within those walls it was really powerful to me to experience.
Is there anything else interesting about the house that we might not know from the play?
It's for sale.
It's for sale.
So if you're interested, talk to me.
Let's talk a little bit about the residency and what's happened with it. It's been very successful over these past 5 years, and what's next for it.
Yeah, so we did start an artist residency, and we've had, upwards of 300 people who've stayed with us over the course of 4 years, for a week up to a month, writing, painting, composing, and it's been an amazing experience. For various reasons, personal and lots of things, my husband and I we're actually going to our first choice, which was to create this thing in Mexico. But then there was COVID, and literally we were looking at places in January of 2020 down south of the border. Felt like a dumb time to do that. But we're feeling that call to go there, and so we'll be moving to Mexico in a couple months.
Great. That's very exciting. We
Yeah.
look forward to seeing what's next. For
And
the
creating the same sort of outfit down there.
So, Harlan, could you speak a little bit about queer history in Charleston? Just like, sort
Sure.
of, Brad mentioned like how things were different in the 40s as opposed to the 70s and 80s, and just the evolution of queer Charleston, if you will.
Sure, but I'll maybe try to focus it. So Charleston obviously had queer history. You talk about his words that he used for it, alphabet soup, colorful. The original words were, I guess, sodomite or buggerer. And over time, but Charleston truly has a robust LGBTQ plus, IA plus. I left some of the letters of the alphabet out. History. It's a hidden history, but I think like everything else, people are now discovering that, despite rules against it, we are a very diverse society. And there's always been a trace, and finding those traces, it is research, but you also have to use imagination, as you did certainly in writing your play too. You have certain facts and you have to pick up innuendos to try to find the traces. But I will say, I'll try to focus it, the first brothel, the first club that I can find in the city of Charleston is 1899. It's on Wentworth Street between King and Meeting, and white men and black men are at a male brothel in downtown Charleston in 1899, right after the Oscar Wilde scandal. This is the first time that Charleston has to admit, there's a tiny little police report that appears in the paper. This is the first time that Charleston is confronted with, as they call it, the French vice. It's certainly, and later on in the 20th century, they'll say it comes from Chicago. But all of a sudden, and it's so interesting, again, germane to this, that the black men, they're named, they're jailed. The white boys, and these are young men, teenagers, 20s, the white boys are not named. And so it's just so interesting that that's the first thing that we can find about, a club per se in the city of Charleston, again, including race.
Yeah.
Charleston, actually, in the 1970s, has a fairly robust scene. There's a terrible murder in 1958, which would be a great story for a play, a candlestick murder, where a gay man is murdered and the straight man who kills him gets off scot-free. But again, we've come a far way. What I really would like to just say, I think sitting here tonight, we're making history. Charleston is what, we've had the literary renaissance, we've had great plays here, John Blake Wright writing plays in the early 19th century. The only other play that I know that has Charleston with a slight homosexual accent to it, it was a play called South by a man named Julian Green, no relation, born in France in 1900. His parents had been born in Savannah. He's in the French Academy, the only American to ever done it. And he produces a play in the 1950s in London, which is censored because it takes place in Charleston, South Carolina on April 1861, right when the Civil War is breaking out. And it's a civil war within this character himself. It's unrequited love for one Southern man for another officer, and it ends in tragedy. And it is a great play. It was made into an opera. You can actually watch it on YouTube. It was televised in London. It was televised in the British Isles in the 1950s, and it's called South or Sud. Wow. And it's considered the earliest filmed production on British television about of anything dealing with a gay subject. And
wow.
Yeah, it's an astonishing play, but I will say that we all think of the gay playwright Tennessee Williams. We all know the great line, I rely on the kindness of strangers. It's a DuBose Hayward connection, I just thought of it. Tennessee Williams' agent was DuBose and Dorothy Hayward's agent, Audrey Wood. When Tennessee was trying to finish Streetcar Named Desire, Audrey had to get him out of New York. She brought him down to the Fort Sumter house, which one was the Fort Sumter Hotel, because that's right around the corner where DuBose and Dorothy had lived. And she brings Irene Selznick down, the producer. They fix it, and so then X number of years ago, in one of the auction things, the manuscript for Streetcar Named Desire comes up for auction, and on letterhead Fort Sumter Hotel stationery, you can see Tennessee Williams trying to come up with the line, I've always relied on the kindness of strangers.
Wow.
So, but this is history. This is a gay play set in Charleston with gay characters. And so it's a great piece of drama, but it's a piece of history too.
Thank
Congratulations.
you, Harlan. Wow. Well, and I have to share that when we were in the process of moving here, my husband and I had a residency myself in Northern California. And while I was there, I read Why We Never Danced to Charleston. And it was, it's a wonderful novel that Harlan wrote also about something that really happened, but we don't really know exactly what happened. And Harlan used imagination to tell the story and to come up with an ending. Super powerful, and like what a glimpse into what that gay life was like at the early part of the 20th century. It was just amazing.
And it reflects back on the Rutledge, the Gibbs, because Ned Jennings, the character of this, was a gay artist, no doubt about it, kills himself in 1929, and for the longest time, the Gibbs the family would not allow to have it said that he was gay. So they finally did an exhibit about 3 or 4 years ago with a gay curator, and they were finally allowed by the family to tell the truth, to put his art on the wall, and to actually show that, yes, this was art done by a gay man. So again, resonance, incredible resonance. There is a spirit. You've tapped into some kind of gestalt, in the city of Charleston, in gay life and in racial life.
To hear that from Harlan Green is just, I can't tell you what that means to me.
Perhaps it was a ghost. Harlan's books are available at all fine booksellers if you are interested in reading more about that story or Porgy's Ghost. I just want to acknowledge our cast, which has now joined us here.
Yay!
It's hard to believe that there are only 4 of y'all. I mean, there were so many people on the stage. Y'all were great.
And just another peculiar tidbit, the Gibbses also got an exhibit open right now that is a retrospective of a 100-year-old Charleston artist. So sometimes life imitates art, because that is not something...
And it's amazing art, so go see it. It's
so a plug for the Gibbs as well.
Yeah.
We want to open the floor up to some questions. Anybody want to kick us off here?
How long did it take you to write this? And how many revisions?
I really did start thinking about it almost immediately. So we moved into the house in August of 2021, and I would say a year later I actually started writing. So that would have been 22, and now it's 26. So lots. It takes a while. Yeah, it takes a minute.
Yes, Miss.
Why one actual person, Dorothy Hayward, and everybody else fictional? What?
Well, that's a great question. I think it was, I was so enthralled with this whole notion of, Dorothy herself, and of this writer spending a week or more with her on Polly's. And I just, I don't know that a fictionalized name would have had the same impact on the audience. And I was making up things about the men that I really don't know. And to be honest, my neighbors knew these people, right? And some of them have, they like literally knew the artist and had been to those parties with the libations flowing. And so I don't want to make anyone who knew the actual people feel that I'm in any way, I don't want them to feel embarrassed by anything. So that I want to really emphasize that all of that is my imagination. What we put in about Dorothy, all of the dialogue is completely imaginary, but she did meet with this writer on Polly's to try to create this Broadway play that never happened. And so that really is adhering to the truth, to the actual history in a way that the other characters are more fictional. But I just thought that up to second when I answered your question.
And
So I don't know.
Can I interject something before the next question? So again, you talk about ghosts and echoes. Dorothy Hayward wrote her one short story was called The Young Ghost. And in that short story, someone has died, and the house itself is trying to communicate to the survivors.
You're
to
joking,
say, I'm
Harlan.
not.
Yeah.
That the house itself is trying to communicate to the people in there to say how she died and what the
wow.
story is.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so then, again, it just occurred to me when I was
That's
watching
so
this tonight.
fascinating. Yeah, thank you.
Yes, you again.
Me again.
Mm-hmm.
So the play reveals one secret. It doesn't reveal the others.
Yeah, yeah. We wrestled with that. So my original intent was to not tell the Jack secret. And I'm in a playwrights group that I've been with many, many years, these folks. And the playwrights kept saying, we want to know, we want to know. So I'm like, okay. So then I wrote out what it was. And we worked with it. I was not here the night that the cast first worked with it. And I got a call the next day, the next morning from Sharon saying, the cast has some questions about the last scene. And I came to rehearsal that night, and it was so helpful to hear them talk about. And the way that they asked the question was, what do you want the audience to be feeling at the end? What do you want the audience to be feeling about this couple, Jack and Dylan? And I was like, well, I want them to at least be like hoping or rooting for them to work. And they're like, that is not going to happen. I'm like, what? And they're like, no. So I was like, okay, so we got a problem. And that was really it. And I went kind of back to the original impulse, which was to not tell, because what was happening was like you were so focused on that you would have left the theater tonight going, I don't know, was that really that bad? No, that was terrible. All you would have been talking about on the way home was what you thought about what it was that Jack did, and all the rest of the story would have been eclipsed by that, and that was not where I wanted to land this plane. Right, honestly, I don't know of another theater in this country where I could have done this, where that kind of feedback would have been able to be offered to me, and where, frankly, I would have felt comfortable enough to be able to take it. And that is an extraordinary gift of when you're doing a world premiere, and what that initial team, the director and the actors, bring. And if you're in a place that they trust you and you trust them, then that's what you get. And it's such an amazing gift. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. I don't have a question. I just have a comment.
Okay.
Brad, I just want to thank you for coming to Charleston for 5 or almost 6 years, and everything that you've done for our community. And just know that your footprint is always going to be in Charleston.
Thank you. Dana is trying to ask a question back there.
Dana.
Yeah, so there's a couple layers of privilege in this play. I feel like there's some white privilege that's pretty obvious. But then I think as a viewer, I feel a level of straight privilege. And I guess I don't know that I know how to voice this, but when you recognize in writing a story that you are experiencing a profound moment of safety or privilege, and then you've let someone else down, I particularly appreciate the way you wrote that in. I mean, the way that you wrote that in the character's experiences. I think I'm really asking the actors this, is the subtlety with which you convey the realization of your privilege. Like when you're walking up and you're finally seeing the colored newspaper and realizing what's going on, it really kind of, I felt it pretty deeply, that we walk past our privilege constantly in our lives. We don't notice what other people have to bear for us. But then there's the privilege of just being a straight person in a gay world. I mean, we're in a gay world and a straight world all the time. And I know you know what I'm saying anymore, but thank you.
You're welcome.
And there is the theater where everything melts and blends. So
Yeah, I think that's what I'm experiencing. Yeah, thank you, Harlan.
Yes.
I'm curious as to where you're going in Mexico.
Guanajuato. It's about an hour and a half from San Miguel de Allende, central Mexico. Beautiful, beautiful colonial town with a 300-year-old university.
He'll send you all postcards.
Yeah.
Do they have a theater?
They have a beautiful theater. Oh my gosh, they do. Yeah.
Any other questions? Yes, up top.
Obviously, I've never written a play before. What goes into that? What is your creative process like?
That's a great question.
Can you repeat the question? Because
What was the process? How did I get started and write it? What the first thing that came out was an even longer version of Tommy's long monologues. It was that character and that voice that was the first thing, and wrote some of those monologues out first, and actually, submitted them for very short play things because they sort of had at the time, a beginning and middle of end to themselves. And then the rest of the characters began to build out around that. And that's maybe I don't know, that was how it happened, yeah.
Great. Yes.
You have not lived in the South before.
I spent a good number of years in, I don't know if y'all think it's the South, but they do, in Texas. And then I lived here in Charleston for 3 years, working for the Spoleto Festival as a young man, my first time to actually make a living in the arts, and then my family lived here and I kept coming back constantly. So while I have a sort of a checkered history of the South throughout my lifetime.
My question is, how did you come to the age-old question of the South's struggle with its history of African Americans and how they were treated? It is a social, you brought me to tears. You brought me.
Thank you. I'm so glad to hear it.
It is, and I think somebody back here was saying that too. It is, you have to be here for a long time. I'm not from the South, but I've been here since I was 18. And so you brought that, you knew that so well, and I'm wondering, how did he know? He hasn't been here long enough to understand that.
Yeah. Well, again, it's been longer than 5 years. It's interesting. I have a friend of mine, an Episcopal priest in San Francisco, who's from Houston, born and raised, came to a conference, church conference here in Charleston, and he came back and he said he was just so struck by the just constant presence of slavery. And I'm like, yeah, you can't hide from it in Charleston. And I think, honestly, very easy for me to say as a white person, but in a way, thank God, because we can't forget it. We can't just turn our eyes away from that past. And we are living with each other, and we have to continually deal with that past and the present. It's the whole country is like that, but this place embodies it more purely, I think, than anywhere else. And that inability to sort of turn your back on it, if you have any sort of awareness around you, I think is part of the power of this place, really.
Mm-hmm. Yes, we'll take these last two questions right up top.
So given what you've just said, how has this 3 years here and becoming immersed in the history and the culture changed you as a writer or affected you?
I can't tell you how much I've changed, honestly, and I think about it frequently. Again, when we chose to move to Somerville, I don't know if I'd ever been there, certainly not to the historic district. And I kind of thought I knew how downtown Charlestonians would think about what we were doing, bringing in a bunch of weirdo artists from around the world. I thought they probably would think that was a good idea. I didn't know what how this was going to go down in the historic district of this town that had like generations living next door to me. And it's been extraordinary to see the way that the town has embraced both the project and my husband and I, which blew a bunch of biases up. And I'll tell you, people who voted for the man that I voted for president and people who voted for the other one. And that has blown my mind in so many ways and has opened me up as a person and maybe as a writer as well.
I think that's a great place to leave it, folks. Harlan, Brad, thank you so much.
Yes, Megan.
Hi, I'm going to make a quick shameless plug. Now more than ever, it's a fantastic time to go see some artwork in Charleston. So there is a Leo Twiggs exhibit at the Gibbs.
Yes.
When you pull it back up, it's running through May 3rd. While you're there, you should also check out, there's another Columbia-based artist, Cole Peace, who has an exhibit there through the May 24th. And then if you have not been to Drummond Studio Galleries over on Line Street, Aaron was supposed to be with us tonight, but he was not feeling well. You should definitely go check out. He has a current exhibit up of all female artists, but rotating events throughout the year.
And that's some of Aaron's artwork in the lobby, and then one of the artists that he's had in his gallery. And when I saw those, I was like, that's the porno paintings.
Yeah.
So there you go.
And I've already bought one.
They are for sale, so please.
Are for sale.
Thank you, everybody.
Yes, Megan.
Hi, I'm going to make a quick shameless plug. Now more than ever, it's a